The galaxy thought humanity was extinct. A forgotten warship, buried in silence for centuries, now roars back to life. As alien civilizations fall to a force they can't comprehend, only one ancient vessel remains, armed, angry, and human to the core. Welcome to the story of the last dreadnought. A tale of vengeance, sacrifice, and firepower the universe has never seen before. Stay till the end, because what you're about to witness will change everything you thought you knew about interstellar war. Like, subscribe and buckle up. Humanity is back, and we never play fair. At the farthest edge of map space, where star systems fade into the cold oblivion of the intergalactic void, there lies a region the Galactic Council classified as unsalvageable. Ancient maps marked it only as Sector 9 Zeta, but among traders, smugglers, and scavengers, it carried a different name, the Graveyard of Giants. Nothing grew there. No stars burned, just drifting debris fields, the hollow wrecks of long-dead ships, and the residual radiation of battles, so old no records remained. Sensors failed there, navigation was unreliable, and even the boldest explorers whispered of ghost signals, screams and static, and hulls scored by weapons no living civilization could replicate. In this forsaken space, hidden behind the crushed remains of asteroid colonies and battleship husks, floated a derelict Leviathan of blackened metal and blood-red armor plating, nearly the size of a small moon, silent, cold, dead to the stars for centuries. Its name, barely visible beneath layers of cosmic dust and impact scoring, read, HSS Leviathan, once the crown jewel of humanity's war fleet. The Leviathan was a dreadnought-class vessel from an age before the Galactic Council's rise, when human ambition still bled across the stars unchecked. Built not just for war, but for psychological domination, it was a weapon designed to be remembered, an iron symbol of Earth's wrath, bristling with weaponry so powerful entire species signed peace treaties without ever seeing it fired. But time was merciless. When the human interstellar dominion collapsed under the weight of its own wars, bureaucracy, and enemies, the Leviathan vanished from history. Official records said it was destroyed in the Battle of Atherprime. No wreckage was found. No distress beacon pinged. For all the Council knew, it was scrapped floating in deep space, forgotten like the empire that built it. Unbeknownst to them, the Leviathan had survived, but only barely. Its fusion cores had failed. Cryo decks were sealed in emergency lockdown. Life support dropped to minimum. The AI shut down most functions to preserve what little power remained. Drifting to the graveyard like a phantom, the ship waited, untouched, for centuries. It was pure chance, or fate, that led a scavenger crew to it. The scavengers, members of a fringe alien guild known as the Trinari, had no interest in human history. They were opportunists, pirates by another name, trawling the graveyard for high-value alloys, salvageable tech, or relics to sell to collectors. Their sensors picked up a massive metallic signature, larger than any vessel they had ever seen. No active defenses, no power signals, no life signs. To them, it was a jackpot. They approached the Leviathan with a mixture of awe and greed, their small cargo vessel dwarfed by the massive silhouette of the dreadnought. Its hull was scarred, its armor gouged and melted in places, but its structure remained unbroken, a testament to ancient engineering. They breached the outer airlock with industrial lasers, expecting a quiet, ghostly interior to loot. Instead, they triggered an awakening. The moment their tools penetrated the Leviathan's primary hull, dormant systems began to stir. Emergency backup cores flickered. Sensors blinked to life for the first time in 500 years. A trickle of energy surged through long frozen veins of supercooled cabling. Internal defense protocols registered the intrusion, but did not activate. The ship did not recognize the Trinari as a threat. It registered something far more important: proximity to external life forms. The Leviathan's AI core, known as Sable, was designed with redundancy that bordered on obsession. If life was detected nearby and if minimal power could be rerouted, then it was authorized to initiate Protocol Eden, a last resort revival command. Deep in the core decks, ancient cryo-sleep pods began to hum. Ice cracked. Monitors flashed. A heartbeat, faint and irregular, reappeared on the medbay's long-abandoned display. The scavengers, unaware of what they had triggered, continued their exploration, but the ship no longer saw them as intruders. It saw them as catalysts, beacons of life. And life meant hope. The ship was waking up. And with it, so was Captain Rhea Sol, last surviving war commander of the Dominion's final fleet. She had been entombed not in death, but in contingency, a relic preserved in frozen stillness in case of extinction-level failure. The Leviathan's primary directive had not been revenge, nor even defense. Its final protocol had been something much older, something raw, encoded directly into the ship's ancient mission logs. Humanity endures. If all else fails, awaken. Remember, retake the stars. The galactic balance was about to shift, not because a new weapon or a new species, or even a new war, but because an old warship was opening its eyes. And it remembered everything. Cryostasis was not intended for centuries. Human biology, even at its peak of augmentation, was never designed to endure that length of suspension. But Protocol Eden had calculated the odds, measured the decay curves, and initiated the revival of the Leviathan's most critical asset, Captain Rhea Sol. She was not just a commander. She was a product of Earth's final generation of war-bred officers, engineered for battlefield decisions under psychic strain, trained in zero-G combat before adolescence, and educated not in peacekeeping, but in total strategic annihilation. When the Dominion fell, Rhea had been leading the last known counteroffensive against an encroaching Xeno fleet. Her last memory, according to what remained in the AI's fragmented records, was issuing a command to scuttle the fleet to prevent capture. She had been declared missing in action, presumed dead, but she had not died. The cryo chamber opened slowly, allowing her vitals to stabilize before consciousness returned. Her reawakening triggered secondary protocols: medical AI assistance, language resynchronization, shipboard status briefings. Decades of history had passed in what felt like moments. Her muscles were weak, her vision blurred, but her mind, rebuilt from reinforced neural pathways and memory engrams, recovered with terrifying speed. She was alone. The Leviathan's crew was gone. Over 800 souls, cryogenically stored in reinforced pods, had long since failed due to power shortages, hull breaches, or system degradation. The AI spared only her. She was the highest-ranking officer, the only one the system deemed essential for reactivation. Everyone else had been declared non-critical. With her revival complete, Rhea accessed the Leviathan's historical logs, fragmented and corrupted by centuries of cosmic drift. She pieced together what she could. Earth was gone, not destroyed, but lost in bureaucratic oblivion, buried in political reshuffling that followed humanity's collapse. The Dominion had splintered into isolated colonies, each either absorbed into larger coalitions or wiped out in silent wars never officially recorded. The great human experiment in galactic dominance had ended not with a cataclysm, but with a shrug. What replaced was a Galactic Council, a collective of over 200 species, guided by machine-governed neutrality. Wars were now simulated, not fought. Weapons were heavily restricted. AI treaties regulated even the concept of preemptive strikes. Words like prejudice, aggression, and retribution had become cultural taboos, remnant of barbaric past, a past humanity embodied. And yet, something stirred in the shadows of the stars. From the wreckage of the Leviathan's long-range sensor array, Rhea retrieved fragmented telemetry, unusual patterns of mass disappearance across fringe colonies, biosignature anomalies in entire sectors, and encrypted distress calls that terminated mid-sentence. Matching these fragments against old Dominion threat models, the Leviathan's AI made a chilling identification: the Vorn'kai. They were never defeated. They had simply withdrawn. The Vorn'kai were not conquerors in the traditional sense. They did not invade or enslave. They consumed planetary biospheres, stellar energy, even gravity wells. Their technology was biological, adaptive, and resistant to machine learning. AI defenses failed to predict them. Diplomacy meant nothing. They were an extinction engine. Centuries ago, only the Dominion's brutal and unrelenting tactics had slowed them. And now, the Council's pacified fleets would offer no resistance. Rhea understood immediately what was at stake. The Leviathan was not just a weapon, it was a doctrine, a symbol of a time when humanity embraced the chaos of war with fire and steel, when logic took a backseat to fury. The galaxy no longer had fleets like this. Their ships were efficient, clean, predictive. The Leviathan was messy, loud, angry, and effective, but she also understood the ship's limitations. Its power cores were functional, but aged. Its primary weapons needed calibration. And most importantly, it had no crew. A dreadnought, no matter how powerful, could not fight alone. Its guns required hands. Its systems required coordination. Its strategies required instincts no AI could replicate. Still, the ship had something irreplaceable: its will to fight. The Leviathan had not succumbed to entropy. It had waited, preserved. It had gambled all its power on the hope that its captain would wake. And now that she had, it sent a pulse across subspace, a signal lost for centuries, a frequency encrypted with human neural algorithms. A beacon. It carried no language, no plea for help, only a code, ancient, dangerous, and unmistakably human. It said, "We are awake. We remember. We are armed." The galaxy did not yet know what this meant. The Council's networks registered the anomaly. The Vorn'kai ignored it. Most species dismissed it as static. But for those who still believed in the legend of Earth's fury, for the criminals, outcasts, war orphans, and zealots, it was a call to something greater. Captain Ria's soul stood ready. The Leviathan's heart beat once more. Humanity, long forgotten, had just re-entered the war. The fall of humanity did not come as a spectacular collapse or final apocalyptic war. It came through erosion of morale, of alliances, of resources, and of relevance. As human colonies fractured and Earth withdrew into isolation, a power vacuum formed. Into that void stepped the emerging bureaucracies of the post-Dominion era. Through treaties, diplomacy, and unification efforts, they created what became known as a Galactic Council, a multi-species governing body designed to prevent another species from rising with the destructive force humanity once wielded. The Council operated not by conquest, but by consensus. Its military fleets were largely ceremonial, comprised of vessels equipped with non-lethal energy disruptors, shield dampeners, and containment drones. Wars between member species were resolved through strategic simulations and arbitrated conflicts. AI war courts calculated outcomes. Entire generations grew up without hearing a single cannon fired in anger. Peace was enforced through collective shame, technological dependence, and tightly regulated ethics protocols. Aggression was classified as a disorder. Weapons development was allowed only under transparent surveillance. Entire galactic universities taught that violence was an evolutionary dead end. In this order, humanity had no place. Humans, when remembered at all, were cited in xenological textbooks as a cautionary tale, a species of innovation and brutality, capable of remarkable advancement and equally horrific destruction. Their doctrines, mutually assured devastation, first strike supremacy, scorched earth, were dissected and condemned. Museums displayed fragments of their ships and weapons as relics of a darker time. Their extinction, while never officially recorded, was widely accepted as both tragic and necessary. It was easier for the Council to believe they had burned themselves out than confront the fear that one day they might return. Now, with the Leviathan active and a human captain alive, the Council's delicate equilibrium began to fracture. Initial sensor logs detected the ancient dreadnought's energy signature in the unregulated graveyard sector. Alarmed at the presence of unauthorized weapons, the Council dispatched reconnaissance drones. Their AI-controlled observers could not decipher the Leviathan's technology. The ship's outdated protocols were incompatible with modern software. Its encrypted pulse, meant as a beacon to surviving humans, was misinterpreted as a system corruption or malware burst. Only the ancient species, those who had once fought beside or against humanity, recognized the signal for what it was. And they were afraid. Internal debates ignited within the council chambers. The pacifist factions argued for diplomacy. The isolationist blocs demanded immediate quarantine of the sector. A few radical voices proposed preemptive strikes. Quiet erasure of the ship before it destabilized galactic peace. But such an act would require a unanimous vote, and the Council had not agreed on anything unanimously in over a century. While they argued, the Leviathan continued to activate. The Vorn'kai threat, meanwhile, remained largely unacknowledged. Despite growing reports of dead systems, missing populations, and anomalous gravitational shifts, the Council refused to classify the incidents as war. Their belief in AI governance and peace-based diplomacy left them blind to an enemy that neither negotiated nor communicated. Their logic-based models failed to predict the behavior of a species that consumed not out of greed or power, but instinct. In that vacuum of inaction, the Leviathan became more than a ship. It became a symbol. Word of its awakening leaked through underground networks. Pirate lords, smuggler clans, and exiled mercenaries began speaking of the Red Ghost in hushed tones. Some believed it was myth. Others believed it was vengeance incarnate. The very idea of a fully armed human warship shook the foundations of Council propaganda. For those who had suffered under the Council's cold governance, the Leviathan represented an alternative, one that bled, burned, and roared. Across the galaxy, reactions splintered. On industrial worlds ruled by machine logic, children were taught emergency drills for archaic human contact scenarios. On border colonies still scarred by Vorn'kai attacks, rebel factions declared loyalty to the dreadnought signal. On Council-controlled holonets, algorithms suppressed discussions about the Leviathan, censoring its name from public records. But whispers grew louder. The symbol spread, a red star over black steel. Old human graffiti, long forgotten, began reappearing on spaceport walls. Amid this chaos, a fundamental truth emerged. The Council, for all its power, was not built to fight. It was built to maintain. And the Leviathan was a force of disruption. Even as delegates debated containment strategies, the Vorn'kai continued to feed. Their hive worlds expanded beyond simulation projections. Systems fell off the grid without resistance. The Council AI, unable to process the irrational and organic behavior of the Vorn'kai, issued reports of data irregularities instead of sounding alarms. And in the dark between stars, the last dreadnought waited. Not for permission, not for politics, but for a reason. The galaxy had been lulled into believing peace was permanent. That war was a disease cured by progress. That order would last forever. But progress was no shield, and order was no weapon. As the Vorn'kai advanced and the Council hesitated, only one question remained. Was the return of humanity a threat, or the only hope they had left? The Leviathan was not designed to survive eternity. It was constructed for dominance, not endurance. A war machine built to turn entire planets into ash and rewrite enemy histories in the language of orbital fire. But in its long, drifting exile, it endured nonetheless. It endured the collapse of its creators, the corrosion of time, and the silence of space. It endured with only fragments of power and corrupted memory. Now, under Captain Riosol's command, it faced its first true rebirth. The ship's frame remained structurally intact, an architectural miracle of layer hulls, plasma shielding, and adaptive armor composites no longer in use anywhere in the galaxy. Internally, though, it was a different story. Critical systems had degraded. Thermal regulators were ruptured. Secondary weapon mounts had fused from centuries of inactivity. Power conduits were buckled, and environmental systems ran on backup protocols, so archaic they required manual interface. Whole sections of the ship were vacuum sealed due to failed atmospheric integrity. Dozens of decks remained unpowered. Yet at the core, beneath the dust and rust, the heart of the Leviathan still pulsed. That heart was Sable, the ship's central combat AI, once considered a controversial achievement even by Dominion standards. Unlike the Council's emotionless governance systems, Sable had been designed to mirror human aggression, creativity, and unpredictability. It did not advise. It acted. Its algorithms weren't just tactical. They were strategic, psychological, even poetic. It understood fear, exploited hesitation, and found victory not through efficiency, but through ruthlessness. When reinitialized, Sable integrated instantly with Rhea's neural imprint, re-establishing the Captain Link protocol that had once made her and the dreadnought an extension of one another. Together, they began the resurrection. Reconstruction started at the core. Energy production was paramount. The ship's fusion reactors, aged and depleted, were stabilized through a process of fuel reclamation and manual rebalancing. Sable rerouted auxiliary systems to channel power exclusively toward propulsion, life support, and weapon diagnostics. The antimatter chambers, dormant for centuries, showed minor containment fractures but were salvageable. With sufficient repairs, the Leviathan could sustain full operational capacity for at least a limited campaign, long enough to matter. Once power was reestablished, weapons followed. The dreadnought's arsenal was staggering by modern standards. Triple-linked rail cannons the size of capital freighters. Ion lattice beams that could cut through planetoid crusts. Nuclear-tipped swarm torpedoes, now classified as war crimes under Council law. Its primary weapon, the Eye of Sol, a particle accelerator cannon that required a full charge cycle and combined processing power of all three AI subcores, remained offline. Its energy requirements were immense, and it drained life support systems during operation. Still, the possibility of restoration existed. Sable initiated calibration sequences. Each weapon system reactivated required careful balancing. Magnetic field stabilizers had to be realigned. Munitions caches had to be inventoried. Many rounds had degraded, others fused in storage. Some were too unstable to use, yet too dangerous to discard. The ship's automated loaders and targeting systems were tested, repaired, replaced when possible. Drones were deployed to reinforce external armor plating, weld internal bulkheads, and clear sentries of debris from launch tubes. Yet the most significant limitation was biological. The Leviathan had been built for a crew of nearly 1,000 officers, engineers, marines, logistics, tactical AI interfaces. One human could not run a ship of this scale for long. Some functions could be automated. Some could be handled by Sable. But not all. Core systems required human input, not because of design inefficiency, but by intention. The Dominion had built their dreadnoughts to be extensions of the human mind. To operate them fully required presence, intuition, and mortality. But the greatest secret of the Leviathan lay buried within its power core architecture, the sacrificial engine. Unbeknownst to most of the original crew, the Leviathan's main weapon systems operated on a controversial energy amplification method, converting bio-neural patterns, specifically human neural activity, into weapon-grade energy. This process, dubbed echo burning, was pioneered in the Dominion's final war days when fusion and antimatter production could no longer meet battlefield demands. The cost, however, was extreme. Firing the ship's main cannon at full power drained not just energy, but the life force of those linked to the ship's neural grid. Every major strike demanded a death. The system had safeguards. It would not activate without a confirmed combat scenario. But once initiated, the sacrificial engine could not be halted until its charge cycle was complete. The cost of a single volley could range from 1 to dozens of lives, depending on scale. Rhea now understood why the AI had preserved her above all others. Not only was she the ship's captain, she was its key, the only human life remaining with authorization to initiate sacrifice-level protocols. The implications were brutal. The Leviathan could be restored. It could fight. It could even win. But not without cost. The captain would need a crew, volunteers who understood what the ship demanded, people who would willingly tie themselves to its systems, knowing that in the moment of truth, their lives might be traded for galaxy survival. The ship was nearly ready. Now, it needed believers. Across the galaxy, the reactivation signal of the Leviathan echoed through shadow networks, encrypted relays, and outlawed comm frequencies. It was not a distress call nor a demand. It was a code, ancient, unmistakably human, and laced with authority. Most of the galaxy's citizens ignored it. Council worlds filtered the message. Mainstream networks classified it as digital noise or a corrupted Dominion relic. But in the forgotten corners of space, where the civilized order had long since failed, the signal was heard, and it was answered. The Leviathan needed a crew, not just engineers and officers, but those willing to live in the shadow of a warship that demanded blood to function. The standard recruitment channels of old Earth did not exist. There were no academies to draw from, no loyal Dominion outposts to send fresh conscripts. The ship's message reached a different kind of audience. Scavengers, mercenaries, war orphans, criminals, deserters, and drifters. Those who had survived the Council's apathy. Those who had been erased by bureaucracy. Those who remembered or romanticized what it meant to fight for something greater than survival. They came from dead moons and shattered colonies, from industrial rings forgotten by progress, where generations had lived without seeing sunlight or justice. Some came out of vengeance, former soldiers whose homeworlds had been consumed by the Vorn'kai, while the council stalled for debate. Others came for redemption, exiles seeking purpose in the face of annihilation. A few came simply because they had nothing else. The galaxy had made them ghosts. The Leviathan offered them something no peace treaty could: a name. Each recruit was warned. The signal contained embedded memories, holographic bursts of the Leviathan's battles, the detonation of worlds, the screams of entire fleets dying in vacuum. The price was made clear. This was not a mission of diplomacy. This was not a return to honor. It was war in its rawest form. They would not be returning. Many did not care. The first to arrive were specialists, technicians who had served in outlaw fleets or black market AI labs, drawn by the ship's ancient systems and forbidden power signatures. They integrated themselves into Leviathan's infrastructure, restoring forgotten protocols, deciphering command hierarchies, and refitting archaic interfaces with hybrid tech. These were not clean professionals. They worked with grease-stained hands, neural jacks, and illegal implants. They resurrected machines that Council engineers had declared obsolete centuries ago. Following them came the fighters, former Dominion Marines, alien mercenaries disillusioned by peace, hybrid shock troopers bred in the final days of the war. Some were veterans of simulated conflicts who yearned for something real. Others had never known anything but violence. They brought weapons, scars, and stories. They were not bound by species or allegiance. They were bound by anger. Then came the zealots. These were the true believers, those who saw the Leviathan not as a ship, but as a prophecy. On primitive worlds where fragmented human history had been twisted into legend, the dreadnought was seen as a divine engine of retribution. Pilgrims arrived in cloaked ships, whispering oaths in forgotten earth tongues, offering their lives as fuel for the sacrificial engine. Some bore tattoos of the Dominion's dead sigils. Others wore bone from Council police forces they had killed. They sought martyrdom, not victory. Captain Ria's soul accepted them all. There were no uniforms aboard the Leviathan, no salutes, no formal ranks beyond what the ship itself enforced through genetic and neural authority. But a hierarchy emerged, born of competence, conviction, and pain. Engineers became priests of metal. Gunners memorized firing patterns like scripture. Technicians named weapon systems after the gods of dead worlds. The ship became a cathedral of war, its every corridor humming with tension and belief. The Leviathan's AI, Sable, adapted to its new crew with a subtle blend of algorithmic selection and behavioral mapping. It tested them, pushed them, monitored every heartbeat, every flicker of hesitation. Those who faltered were not punished, but they were removed, not by force, but by pressure. They left willingly, realizing they could not endure what the ship demanded. Those who remained grew harder, sharper, aligned. In time, the Leviathan transformed, not into a replica of the Dominion's past, but something new, something worse, or better, depending on which side of the canon one stood. A warship without allegiance, a doctrine without politics, a crew without a home, united by one goal: to stop the Vorn'kai and, by extension, to remind the galaxy of what it had forgotten. The Galactic Council, monitoring the sudden shift in deep space activity, issued quiet alerts. Threat assessments were raised. Drones were deployed to shadow the Leviathan's movements. Diplomatic inquiries were filed, but they could not stop the flow. For every defector they intercepted, two more slipped through. The ship had become a myth, a cause, a final answer to a question no one dared ask. Who would fight when no one else could? The crew of the Leviathan had made their choice, and the galaxy would soon learn what that choice meant. The Leviathan's journey from silent relic to active warship culminated not in ceremony, but in fire. The Vorn'kai had taken another system, Syndril, for a mid-rim world with no standing defenses, abandoned by the Council after its ecological value declined. Its population of 4 million had been deemed non-strategic, unworthy of evacuation. Within 72 hours, all life had vanished. No wreckage, no distress signals, no signs of resistance. The Vorn'kai didn't leave survivors. They left hunger marks on planets. From the Council came silence. Investigative committees were formed. AI simulations attempted to model containment. Diplomatic pathways were suggested to understand the Vorn'kai's motivations. None of it mattered. Syndrel, for it became a number in a report. But to the crew of the Leviathan, it was proof. The ship charted its course toward Heshtor, a Vorn'kai birthing moon orbiting a dead gas giant in the Crester expanse. Recon data from surviving probe satellites described the hive world as a mountainous mass of pulsing organic structures, enveloped in gravitational distortion fields and shrouded in biologically produced electromagnetic fog. No Council fleet had approached within firing range. Those that tried had been lost without trace. The Leviathan did not hesitate. It did not request permission. It calculated trajectory, aligned its magnetic cannons, and prepared for engagement. The attack began not with a warning shot, but with saturation fire. From a distance of over $1.30, the Leviathan launched a wave of kinetic projectiles, dense, rod-shaped masses accelerated to relativistic speeds by triple-stage railguns. These were not intelligent weapons. They didn't seek targets. They simply obliterated whatever they hit. When the first impacted the hive moon, the biological crust vaporized in a plume of molten chitin and liquefied flesh. Shockwaves tore through surface structures never designed to endure high-velocity impacts. The Vorn'kai responded, but not in organized fashion. They were instinct-driven, adaptive, but slow to react to something they had not encountered in centuries. As defensive tendrils reached out from the moon's surface, attempting to lash at the attacking warship, the Leviathan transitioned into combat formation. Plasma shielding expanded. Countermeasures activated. Missile bays opened like the jaws of a beast reawakened. From its lower hull, Hellfire torpedoes, banned by 3 galactic conventions, were deployed in a coordinated spread. These weapons were not designed for precision. They were designed for annihilation. Each warhead contained multiple stage payloads: kinetic rupture, neutron burst, and viral disintegration. Their detonation created craters kilometers wide, disrupting the hive's neural communication network. And yet, the most devastating blow came from the ship's main cannon, the Eye of Sol. For centuries, the Leviathan's primary weapon had slumbered. It required enormous power, extended charging time, and a human neural catalyst. As the crew braced for ignition, the sacrificial engine activated. Power rerouted from life support. Cryo tanks vented pressure. A name was recorded. One crew member, chosen by lottery or volunteering, linked into the neural command lattice and surrendered themselves. Their consciousness dissolved in seconds. Their brain activity became energy. Their sacrifice charged the shot. The cannon fired. It did not make sound. In the vacuum of space, there was only light, a beam of concentrated energy, amplified by quantum lenses and particle accelerators, tore through the Vorn'kai hive. Mountains liquefied. Organic towers collapsed. The moon's crust cracked under the pressure. Subterranean chambers, thick with gestating hive creatures, erupted into void-born fire. What remained was no longer a world. It was a bleeding ruin suspended in orbit. The cost was high. The ship trembled. Systems strained. A life had been consumed. But the damage had been dealt. For the first time in centuries, the Vorn'kai retreated. It was not a rout, not a surrender. It was instinctual withdrawal, a hive mind's reaction to unsustainable loss. Their neural network fractured. Their sensory cores shrieked in ways no translation matrix could interpret. They began abandoning adjacent systems, breaking hive links, fleeing toward the deep black. No other force in the galaxy had ever caused such a reaction. Not the Council, not its AI control fleets, not its legalistic diplomacy. Only the Leviathan. News of the strike spread like fire and oxygen. Fragments of footage leaked, grainy visuals of the particle cannon's beam, audio recordings of crew chants before sacrifice, intercepted Vorn'kai pulse signals warped in pain. On Council worlds, these were treated as propaganda. But on the fringes, among pirates, refugees, rogue scientists, and forgotten soldiers, it was something more. It was proof that the myths were real, that the fire still burned. The Council responded with discomfort, urgency. Official statements condemned the unauthorized engagement. Debates erupted over the ethics of the sacrificial engine. Investigation subcommittees were formed. A small fleet was tasked with monitoring Leviathan, not to assist but to contain. Even in victory, humanity's methods were seen as unacceptable. But containment fleets moved slowly. Bureaucracy took longer. The Leviathan moved on. In its wake, scorched silence, alien terror, and a single, undeniable message etched across the stars. Humanity remembers war. And now the galaxy would too. The destruction of the Heshtor hive moon marked a turning point, not merely in the battle against the Vorn'kai, but in the ideological equilibrium that had kept the galaxy in fragile balance for centuries. The Leviathan had not just dealt a blow to an enemy species. It had reignited something the Galactic Council had spent generations trying to erase. Fear. And with fear came memory. Memory of humanity's capacity to disrupt, destroy, and dominate. The Council's immediate reaction was split. The pacifist coalitions demanded sanctions. Legalists called for a tribunal. The technocratic factions attempted to label Leviathan as a Class 7 uncontrolled AI entity, disregarding its human captain to circumvent jurisdiction. The few military blocs left within the Council, mostly symbolic in function, quietly advocated for observation rather than confrontation. But unity was lost. The same artificial consensus that had held the Council together began to fracture under the pressure of reality. On the surface, the Council continued its policy of neutrality. Behind closed doors, black-budget operations commenced. Proposals were drafted to develop countermeasures. AI researchers were tasked with replicating Leviathan's destructive capacity without replicating its methods. An internal faction even discussed reverse engineering the sacrificial engine, cloaked in euphemisms like bioconversion amplification, though none admitted it openly. What they could not control, they now sought to match. But deep inside, there was recognition of a bitter truth. No system they could build would mimic what a Leviathan embodied, belief weaponized through suffering. The Vorn'kai were reeling, but not destroyed. Their hive networks had been disrupted, their communication channels fractured, but they adapted. Scouts reported signs of migration, hives collapsing their outer clusters and reorienting inward. It was not retreat. It was coiling, a predator drawing back before the lunge. They no longer ignored the Leviathan. Their formations changed, their movements slowed. In some quadrants, they avoided sectors entirely. For the first time in centuries, the Vorn'kai were behaving strategically. Fear had taught them caution. In response, the Leviathan doubled down. The crew, now growing with each passing day, embraced their role not as soldiers, but as symbols. Recruits arrived not for survival, but for participation in something larger than themselves. They believed they were part of a final war, not just against a species, but against galactic amnesia. Their cause became a creed. The galaxy forgot what it cost to be safe. We will remind them. This ethos took root beyond the ship. Splinter cells formed on frontier worlds, some adopting the Leviathan sigil, a black sunburst over red armor plating. As their standard, Rogue Shipyard began to secretly mimic dreadnought schematics. Council enforcers were ambushed in neutral zones. Black market networks shifted from narcotics to weapons-grade power cells and fusion warhead cores. A new insurgency grew. Not one rebellion against a system of oppression, but defiance against the pacification of survival. Civil unrest followed. In distant colonies, where council oversight had always been minimal, uprisings occurred under banners quoting Earth's long-lost war poets. On knowledge worlds, banned Dominion literature saw resurgence. In digital spaces, the idea of necessary violence resurfaced in ideological forums once sterilized of such thoughts. The more the Council condemned the Leviathan, the more it became a beacon. The ship itself became an unignorable variable. With every successful strike, every intercepted Vorn'kai signal, its legend grew. No other vessel had destroyed a hive world. No other force had driven the Vorn'kai into hiding. And no other command was built on sacrifice by design. The cost was real. Each main cannon activation still demanded lives. Yet those who volunteered to link with the sacrificial engine did so with open eyes. Their names were recorded, engraved into the ship's walls, and transmitted across space with each victory. They were mourned and celebrated not as victims, but as martyrs. The Leviathan's path became a reckoning, not only for the Vorn'kai, but for the galaxy itself. Its presence reminded civilizations what they had abandoned in the name of peace: courage, conviction, pain, and purpose. While the Council debated, the Leviathan moved. While the Vorn'kai adapted, the crew evolved. Tactical formations once considered obsolete, blitz runs, gravity well pinning, atmospheric penetration, were executed with brutal precision. Every battle scar on the ship's hull was left unrepaired, a living record of defiance. And yet, beneath the rising momentum, a deeper current flowed. Captain Ria's soul and the Leviathan's command protocols were no longer interested in mere defense. The objective had shifted. It was no longer enough to stop the Vorn'kai. The time had come to eliminate them, completely, systematically, without hesitation. The logic was simple. If the Council wouldn't end the threat, humanity would. The crew no longer referred to themselves as survivors, soldiers, or outcasts. They called themselves remnants. Not a dominion, not of Earth, but of a forgotten idea that survival wasn't enough. That peace bought through silence was no peace at all. The Vorn'kai had opened a war. The Leviathan would finish it. And the Council? They would either watch or burn. The war did not end in a moment. It ended in echoes. System by system, the Leviathan carved a path through Vorn'kai territory, not with precision strikes or surgical raids, but with total warfare. Colonies that once belonged to extinct civilizations were repurposed into forward arsenals. Dead moons became fueling stations. Abandoned spaceports were turned into sacrificial shrines, where volunteers joined the neural lattice without hesitation. The crew expanded into a mobile culture, a fusion of ancient human doctrine and newly forged purpose, bound not by allegiance to a nation but to a shared understanding. That peace was only meaningful when earned by fire. The Vorn'kai hives, once vast and impossible to quantify, began to vanish. Each encounter grew shorter, each retaliation more desperate. The Vorn'kai adapted, but the Leviathan evolved. Sable, the dreadnought's AI, grew increasingly predictive, mapping hive movements, disrupting their collective awareness, fracturing their biological consensus with disruptive pulses and modified virus code seeded into atmospheric detonation events. It was genocide by design, not with malice, but with certainty, a solution to a problem no one else would solve. The sacrificial engine ran often. With each use, it claimed another name, yet never once did the crew resist. The Chosen walked into the neural chamber willingly, leaving behind last words, neural imprints, and biometric signatures. These were uploaded into the ship's memorial core, an ever-expanding database of sacrifice. No AI processed their thoughts. No archive indexed their memories. They were simply remembered. And in return, the ship's cannon fired again and again until no Vorn'kai remained in range. Then came the silence, not strategic withdrawal, not hibernation, extinction. The Vorn'kai, once considered a force of nature rather than an enemy, were gone, their hives destroyed, their seed world sterilized, their signals ceased. The galaxy waited for resurgence. None came. For the first time in over 2 centuries, the stars were quiet. But the cost of silence was now undeniable. The Leviathan had become more than a myth. It was now history. Every strike was recorded by rogue data journalists, streamed through blacknet nodes and encrypted satellites. Footage of the final bombardments reached even the innermost Council worlds, where entire generations had never seen weapons fired in anger. The reaction was global. Some wept in awe. Others rioted in protest. Some worlds celebrated. Others fell into paranoia. The Council's authority collapsed in stages. The illusion of invulnerability died the moment the Leviathan succeeded where centuries of policy had failed. Border worlds seceded. Peacekeeping AI clusters malfunctioned under conflicting logic directives. Legislative systems, once relying on consensus models, froze under the burden of divergent beliefs. One by one, core sectors splintered, not into war, but into honesty. The lie of permanent peace had been broken. The galaxy no longer feared war. It feared inaction. And yet, the Leviathan did not seize power. It did not demand rule, tribute, or territory. It stopped. Once the war was finished, the ship entered a self-designated exile. It withdrew to the edge of known space, into a collapsing nebulous storm where sensors failed and comms distorted. It transmitted one final message across open channels. 7 words, in every language known to the galaxy. We fought. We paid. Do not forget. Then it vanished. Speculation abounded. Some claimed the crew had disbanded, scattering to seed new rebellions or teach future defenders. Others believed the sacrificial engine had claimed them all in a final act of cosmic justice. A few whispered that the Leviathan still drifted somewhere, silent once more, waiting for the next threat that dared rise. Over time, the galaxy changed. Not all at once, not with unity, but organically. Some systems rebuilt their militaries, not in defiance of peace, but in preparation for preserving it with strength. Others rewrote their histories to include not just the rise of the Council, but the fall of the Vorn'kai. Forbidden archives were declassified. Human war philosophy returned to the academies, no longer as condemnation, but as case study. The Leviathan became a permanent fixture in the galactic lexicon, a caution, a symbol, a lesson. Monuments rose, some etched with names, others left blank, save for the red emblem of the dreadnought. Children in forgotten colonies whisper its name as a prayer. Warlords avoided systems rumored to carry descendants of the remnants. Even AI systems, cold, logical, emotionless, developed protocols titled Leviathan Contingency, designed not to replicate the ship's power, but to never underestimate again. In the end, the Leviathan did not save the galaxy. It reminded it how to save itself. The Leviathan vanished into the dark, but its fire still burns across every corner of the galaxy it saved. A warship, a warning, a memory carved in steel and sacrifice. If the story gripped your imagination, if it made you feel the weight of what war costs and what peace demands, then help us keep the legend alive. Like this video. Subscribe for more brutal, beautiful sci-fi tales from the edge of forgotten stars, and share it with those who still believe humanity's story isn't over. Drop your thoughts in the comments. What would you do if the Leviathan returned tomorrow? Until next time, stay sharp, stay human,